Hello, movie maniacs, and welcome to episode 1 of Chained. It's a brand new podcast. I'm delighted to be bringing to the Dark Matters channel. My name is Carl, owner and director of Dark Matter Films, and this is very, very exciting because it's our first collaboration with another channel, and I'm delighted to welcome Jack from Jacked In. Jack, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jack from Jacked In, the gateway into movie culture with articles, reviews, recommendations, and weekly video shout-outs. Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Very happy to be aboard with Dark Matters and Carl. Yeah, ecstatic for the opportunity.
So Chained, what is Chained? Well, I'm going to hand over to Jack to tell you what this one's all about.
Right, so the premise in a nutshell is it starts off with me picking a movie and then an actor within said movie, and then we're going to try and create the longest chain of genre actors. So do you want to elaborate what I mean by that, Carl?
So it's a bit sort of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. What we're trying to do is just sort of see how the careers of different genre actors have sort of woven together and intertwined through the years. And I think what's going to be really exciting about it is I like the idea of just sort of seeing where sometimes these actors might intersect again, where they've crossed over with others, trying to make sure we don't end up in any kind of cul-de-sacs where we pick a film where there's just nobody else you can talk about. You know, there's going to be a bit of a gamesmanship between each other, I reckon. Don't you reckon? To try and make sure we kind of send us off in interesting ways, but without kind of hitting dead ends. What do you say?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I definitely like the idea of a good sportsmanship rally. However, there'll definitely be times where I'm a bit of a dick and try and catch you out.
Nice. Well, let's try and not end up in any sort of deep holes that are too deep to get out of. We don't want to break the chain, Jack. So, Jack, you have had the honour of picking the first movie. So tell us what this first episode is going to be about, and also who the actor is that you've picked.
Yes, so for the very first episode, I've decided to go with an absolute 80s horror classic, American Werewolf in London. And I'm going to touch on, obviously, the impact that had, not just on the horror genre, but the cinema in general. The particular actor I chose for this movie is the amazingly talented British actress, Jenny Agutter.
Oh, Jenny. Yes, my Jenny. I've got to say, you know, we had this conversation. You know how upset I was, Jack, about picking Jenny, my Jenny. But no, I've taken it on the chin like a gentleman, and yeah, I will let you have your moment in the spotlight. So I think just to talk a little bit about the format of the show that we're planning going forward, what we're going to do, we're going to start probably just with a little bit of what we've been watching, just a bit of a general catch up, just try and so hopefully just chat about a few new films, old films, things that you viewers might want to actually pick out, if you haven't seen them. Then we'll get into our review, and at the end I'll reveal what episode 2 where the chain will take us. So let's crack on with what we've been watching. So Jack, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so there's 2 that I've watched, but I believe it wasn't planned, but we actually accidentally watched the exact same movie over the past week, which was No One Will Save You.
Yes, it did indeed.
Disney Plus is where I stumbled across it. I don't know if that was the same for yourself.
Yeah, they've been heavily pushing it, I think, and I'd heard it on a couple of other podcasts as well. So yeah, seemed like a good time. And I'm not always the guy that watches things straight away, so it's quite nice to be able to talk about it. Yeah,
no, absolutely, and I don't know, it had an effect on me before I even watched it, and it was a lot like in. This rarely happens these days on the likes of streaming channels, but it was the poster, the artwork, or whatever you want, that captured me the most. The big title, No One Will Save You, brilliant title, and then obviously the abduction photo. So straight away I was just like, "What's this?" And then I read about it that it's short snippet, which was it's a home invasion movie, but in the most literal sense.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it, yeah.
So basically, without spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen it, it's about this person that's confined to the home, and she's somewhat alienated from the town in which she lives in, the residence, and alienated, there's another good one. But basically, there's a sort of B&E breaking and entering home invasion, but it turns out to be literal aliens, and I think it's a brilliant, it's a fresh approach to the home invasion subgenre, and then it's just her trying to deal with these intruders from another planet. But at the same time, it's, as the title describes, I'm not going to spoil it, but because of things that have happened in her past, literally no one in the town wants to know her. So she's literally on her own and she has to deal with this horrendous turn of events on her own.
I particularly like that with the title, because I mean, no one can save you would normally mean, you know, somebody's out in the middle of nowhere or whatever, but she isn't. She's literally right in society, but completely alienated. It was a really interesting character, and I think the way that the film approached that sort of backstory was really well handled. It's a bit like Close Encounters if the aliens were bastards. Yeah, there's definitely sort of a lot of inspiration from Close Encounters, I thought, in there. The sound design was absolutely terrific, I thought. I mean, they'll be gunning for an Oscar, I'm sure, on that one, because the whole thing hinges on sound. I kind of wished I'd seen it in the cinema. I mean, I suppose that's my only criticism, really, is them just shoving this out on Disney.
That's just Disney all over at the moment.
Yeah, just really surprised that they just didn't decide to put this in the theatres, because with that surround sound, that would have been a hell of an experience. So yeah, gutted, but 100% that was a big recommend from me.
And I like what you said about like Close Encounters. Like, I feel like there's a sort of Signs vibe in there, like just because it's like in the middle of nowhere. And even the house, and another comment to make as well is the sort of 50s aesthetic. Like, it's set now, but I think like they very cleverly made like the sort of house like a sort of window into the past, and I think that's definitely a nod to, obviously, it came from outer space, like that sort of like genre from back in the day, when, you know, alien movies were all the rage. And not just that, it wasn't forced. It was, well, there's a reason she doesn't have technology. She just lives as if she's in the past, even though it's set in the present. But it's very cleverly done, I think.
But like, I think overall, you know, like you say, not, you know, I don't know whether I'll think it will be in my sort of top 10 for the year, but certainly a strong recommend. I think, you know, for fans of the genre, I think.
Oh yeah, it's a much watch. It's a must watch. Absolutely, like, get involved.
Cool. Okay, well, my pick was basically, I mean, this is I would say is probably a crushing disappointment. Although I was kind of expecting it, because I don't think I'd heard this one was very good. But I'm quite a big fan of the Final Destination series. I just love a good set piece kill. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm a big horror fan. I love atmosphere, I love story, I love all that stuff, but I also just sometimes just love a really bloody good kill. And I'd not really been super disappointed with the Final Destination series up until Final Destination 4. I think 2 is my favourite. I love the first one. You know, I think the third one was all right, but the fourth one, have you seen it? It was just bad.
No, and I'm in agreement. Like, I think that's perfect. Like, after 3, because like, I don't know. I definitely lost interest like come 4, and then it didn't stop. It's like Fast and Furious or what have you. It's just like, oh, so they're just like, yeah, like we've got a cash cow here. Let's just keep milking, sort of thing.
Well, I think the thing that surprised me was the guy who directed it was the guy who directed episode 2, and like the second one for me had the best tension, kills, like the most unexpected kind of results. I mean, one of the things with the series is always like, you know, it takes you left and then throws you right.
One of the greatest openings in horror history, that highway scene, man. I've never drove behind a log-bearing truck since. Like, it had that much of an effect on me that I'll literally, like, if one's in front, I'll go into the other lane.
It had one thing I absolutely hate, which is films that are just so clearly designed for 3D. But it also had, I don't know if you remember, but it had this, like, really naff thing where basically every time the kill was being preempted, they had this like really crappy X-ray animation that showed you basically what was going to happen. So you saw the kill before the kill even happened, and then you'd watch it play out, and then at the end they repeated all the kills again in this crap X-ray. It was just so bad. I mean, there was only one. You know, the cast were just a bunch of total skin jobs. Absolutely didn't care about any of them. That one of them was just like he'd stepped out of the 90s. Like, the guy was such a caveman, and he was the only one who had a good death. And do you remember, that's where, I don't even care about spoiling this crap, but it was one where his guts get sucked out of his ass through a bottom of a pool. which was
once again, it gave me a new fear. It gave me a new fear. Like, that is its only credit. It gave me a new fear that I didn't think would be possible. But yeah, don't swim at the bottom of swim pools in case it sucks your innards out through your anus, basically.
Exactly. Remember those butt plugs, folks. So, but yeah, that was. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Don't watch it. If you're a fan of the series and haven't got around to number 4, forget it. If you have, wipe it from your memory. I have heard the 5th one pulls it back, so fingers crossed.
They just get like I say, I've seen all of them, but I'm very much of the mindset like it did switch off after 3. But I would even make the argument that 3 might have ran the same risk. I mean, the kills are tremendous, but like you say, a bunch of skin jobs are things that we use, which I love. I think it might have ran the same risk had it not been for Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I'm a huge fan of. Like, because the whole fairground, whole roller coaster, it's like over the top and cheesy. Definitely not the same caliber as the first 2. And I think 3, had it not been for Mary, might have suffered the same fate, but she goes so hard in that role. Like, there's no need for her to go as hard as she does, but my God, like, that's why that movie's so strong. And I always remember watching it, and when she just mentally breaks on that roller coaster, and she's like, I've got to get off, but she doesn't do it in a sort of, this is a cheesy, I've got to get off. It's like, this is a person that thinks they're going to die. Like, she's having an absolute panic attack. And like I say, that's why 3 pulls back. And I don't think, nothing against them or like the direction that they went, but I don't think there was that much commitment from any of the actors, like, going forward, the ones that can see, sort of thing.
But it also didn't tie into any of the mythology. It didn't try and tie into the, the Tony Todd character. Where was he? None of that, worked for me. But yeah, I've said enough. It was crap. I'm not going to talk about it anymore.
Give it a watch, obviously, and if you haven't seen it, get involved, or by all means, let us know what you thought. Is it as bad as Carl's making up?
Jack, anything else?
Recently, Tyneside Cinema, which is renowned in Newcastle for showing a lot of old school movies, classic, niche, cult, what have you. And I've always wanted to see this movie on the big screen, and I finally did. Sleepaway Camp, which is 1980s horror in all the best ways possible. But what separates the movie, for anyone that hasn't seen it, I'm not going to spoil, don't worry, but it's an 80s slasher, but it's elevated. Basically, it does all the cheesy things. It's got really creative kills. The makeup is absolutely tremendous, for one. Like, it's an 80s horror, but the makeup elevates it, and the kills, it looks low budget, basically, until you see the kills. Not only that, but you've got these child actors, and they always say, like, one of the things that you should never work with in the movie industry is like a child cast. But this movie does it so well, and it comes across as genuine. It doesn't come across as scripted, because the majority of the cast in it are kids at this camp, and it just elevates it where it's like, this just seems legit. And not only that, but it's got one of the most mind-melting endings of all time. Like, the movie is like completely ridiculous, but the ending alone makes it an absolute must-watch for not just fans of the 80s horror decade, but just horror fans in general. And I'll even go far as to say, like, movie fans in general. If you want to have your mind absolutely melted, like, get involved.
So just a question about that. So the cast, are they actually, because everyone kind of who knows 80s slashers will be familiar with the fact that the kids in it usually look like they're 42 and have jobs and 3 kids. Do they actually look like kids in this one?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Does it feel like it's quite young? Because that's quite a brave move, I guess. It's quite sort of dark.
And for the ending especially, it's a very brave move, because these are like young, like, child actors, and it's not a case of, they've brought a 30-year-old in, they've stuck a cat and some shorts on them and said they're 12. They're like legit. And maybe some of the counsellors, I would say, are like older, but at the same time, I don't think they're not sort of saying that they're not protesting that they're younger than they are. So yeah, genuine child actors, which once again, like, adds to the legitimacy of it all. I know you haven't seen it, is that right, Paul? very disappointing.
Yeah, I haven't. Sadly, I do know what the ending is. But yeah, I am really looking forward to it. So actually, this is one of two films I've picked. My friends very stupidly allow me to pick the horror films every year, and we have a group watch. And I'm really excited because it's just come out on a platform I subscribe to called Night Flight, and I was really excited about that. You know, that I can watch that one. So it's cool that you've watched it. It means we can talk probably about it on the next episode.
Absolutely, and I mean, like I say, like one of the points I made before is even if it's very unfortunate that you know the ending, but at the same time that I mean, it takes away like obviously like a big part of it, but it doesn't take away the enjoyment because, like I say, it's the child actors and it's got more. It's better than it has any right to be. like I say, right. So yeah. It's very enjoyable to watch, regardless.
Okay, now we're back from the ad break, so it's time to go into the main chunk, the main feature of this podcast. So what it's all about. So going back to that chain idea Jack mentioned earlier. So Jack, over to you and your choice, which is American Werewolf in London.
Yes, a lot of pressure. The very first choice of the show. American Werewolf in London sort of came about, it came about in 81, start of the 80s, and that's when 80s horror really started to thrive and became its own sort of genre in general. Before that, you had the likes of obviously the Wolfman, but like every variation of was that sort of standing on two legs, ripped jeans, sort of Universal Monsters wise for its time, the effects were absolutely amazing, but there was nothing new brought to the table since, and that's when American Werewolf in London came in, directed by John Landis, and he sort of brought this new concept of not necessarily standing on two legs, which I absolutely love. People, have their different tastes, but he wanted it to genuinely look like, a hound from hell, so all fours. And it's probably one of my favourite designs for a werewolf ever. First off, it's my, top 5 favourite horror movies of all time, but it's definitely my number 1 favourite werewolf movie of all time. And it's because it's not just a horror. Like the majority of horrors that I like, I love it when they're laced with a decent amount of dark comedy, especially when it's seamless. And I definitely think that that's what this one accomplishes. And the setting. So a bit of back, I watched this when I was way too young, with the same as most of the horrors that I watched, but I loved how it was, you can't tell by my accent, obviously I'm not from the States, so I loved watching this sort of werewolf movie that was set on, not necessarily home turf, like it's not Newcastle, but I liked it how it was joining these two worlds, and it does it very well because it brings across these outsiders, these Americans with American values, and bring them to the English countryside. And that's, as well as this sort of the character David, as well as this American that's sort of going through this horrible transformation as he's becoming this werewolf, he's also sort of realizing, he's also feeling alienated in terms of his surroundings. So the English, it's not his territory. And I just think it's so well done. And it gets across that he's an outsider so well, from the opening setting, the slaughtered lamb, to him going in London city centre. But yeah, like I say, it's got so many little things. From one of the things I absolutely love about this picture as well is the soundtrack, and it adds so much to it, but it just stinks of effort. For instance, like every song in it, from Blue Moon to Bad Moon Rising, every song is centered around the moon, so it's like just a nod sort of thing, and you get numerous covers, Bobby Vinton, Sam Cooke, and I'm well into that sort of scene anyway, music wise, but it just adds another layer of that sort of like dark comedy. It's like really subtly done, really well done. I've been rambling for a while now, so before I go into any other points, what do you think is from what I've said so far there, right?
Oh no, Jack, I agree with everything you just said. This is this is absolutely for me like a formative horror experience. I mean, again, you know, as is always the case with all like good horror fans, you know, was exposed to it far too young. I mean, I actually clearly remember like the first time I watched it, and it was I used to stay over at my mate Andy's house, and probably about 8 or 9. And at the time, you know, when you're sort of being babysat by somebody that you see as an adult, but on reflection was probably 18, you know what I mean? Like 19, but seemed like a mature, responsible adult. Well, his uncle used to babysit us when his parents went out. And we just ended up watching, it's up there with 2 other films that I clearly remember watching at Andy's house. One was Enter the Dragon. There was American Werewolf in London, and there was a ninja movie called Pray for Death.
Wow.
Sorry, Shokashugi. And I clearly remember all 3 of those. And very soon, off the back of watching American Werewolf, I also watched, it was when Thriller came out, showing my age here, but it was literally, I saw Thriller when it first came out, and they just bought it on VHS. And because we'd watched American Werewolf, I really wanted to watch Thriller, and obviously with John Landis doing that as well.
Yeah.
But it just blew my mind. Let's talk about the opening, because I think it's safe to say it's probably one of the most iconic openings in horror. You know, I think there's very few films that have got a first act as good as American Werewolf. I think right from just the moment where I think that first reveal, what really struck me last night, I'd never quite picked up on it before, but that first reveal when it opens and they are literally amongst the lambs, you know, they are basically the prey, you know, is effectively what that's saying. And I hadn't quite picked up on that symbolism before. I mean, it's shame on me for the times I've seen it, but it really hit me last night, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting, you know, that these guys are almost like sacrificial lambs.
Oh, for sure. It's like I say, it's not an accident. It's not like a sort of like that paid off, that cheeky boat like coincidence. It's like and you sort of like, after rewatching it, you sort of realise that from that moment, the director's letting you know that these guys are doomed from the start. And in case you didn't get it, we're going to put them in a pub called the Slaughtered Lamb. We're just like, in case you didn't get it, like, we're really going to make you aware. I love scenes where outsiders feel awkward to locals. Like, I love that. And it's definitely one of my favourite, when they go into the pub and everyone just stops.
But whatever happens, it's your fault. Right.
All right, come on. Hello.
And then just like eyes them up, and I don't know, like I think it's another brilliant example of how Americans and Brits differ. Like, if I went into the pub like that and got that sort of reaction, I'd probably apologise and leave. But they're just like, oh, come on, like, can we have a drink? Can we have something to eat? And like, they're just totally like sort of, and I think it's a really good introduction to the type of people they are.
There is possibly an assumption there that you don't feel like the countryside could be dangerous, you know what I mean? Like, if you're an American backpacker going to the Yorkshire Dales or whatever, it doesn't feel like a place that could be dangerous. And I think what's great is, I mean, we've both grown up in the UK. You know, we've probably walked into pubs before where you do get eyeballed a bit and you're just a little bit uncomfortable, and you think, well, you know, that could easily happen in pubs over here. But I mean, just the kind of the extent that they get it is classic. Yeah. But they're Americans; they can go wherever they like. You know, it's that sort of.
Excuse me, what's that sign on the wall for? It's just like, why? You've already got a terrible reaction. Why would you take it a step further?
I love the idea that it does what I think all good horror films do, which is hint at backstory. You know, it's not like this isn't new. That she even says later on when the doctor goes, you know, back to the pub, it's been there for 200 years. It's this idea of like, it's a deep-seated history, the curse of the werewolf. This isn't a new thing. It's been there in their community for a long time. And you got to wonder, why haven't they done something about it sooner? Because they polish it off pretty easily. And that's always intrigued me about the film, that it almost feels like there's something more going on. Like, why is it they've let this carry on? Because clearly it's not a new thing. Clearly this is like a historical, cultural thing that they've all accepted, you know, and they're all in the pub because they know they're safe. Just that little hint of kind of backstory just intrigues you, and it kind of just pulls you in and thinks, oh, there's something interesting happening here. He's obviously the first outsider, but I do have to wonder, like, how are they the first outsiders that have ever stumbled across the slaughtered lamb? I do love that opening. I mean, I think it did, because it just there is such a earnestness in the delivery of the Moors. Like, I do love that opening. I mean, I think it did, because it just there is such a earnestness in the delivery of the Moors lines. You know, even though the people, I mean, you've got the brilliant dance player. I mean, you know, you make
yeah.
What a great delivery. But like, even though there's that menace, they still just let them carry on. But when they're sort of, look after yourself, lads, you know, stay off the moors. I mean, there's such a sincerity to the way they're talking, even though they're kind of throwing them literally to the wall.
Stay on the road. Keep clear of the moors.
It's not necessarily disagreeing with you. It's sort of like I never took it that way. When you're saying, you know, like they're just clearly sacrificing them, I never necessarily took it that way. It's when, because the balance between the humour and the sinisterness, like it's done really well when he obviously tells the joke. Like when he tells that joke, it's like, this is just another day in the life of for these people. Like, it's just the norm. They can have a laugh, and there just happens to be, you know, a local werewolf. But I don't think they were. I think the reason why they were happy for them to leave is because they didn't want that whole, like, they didn't want an investigation. They didn't want, like, people to find out what was going on for whatever reason. Like, I don't know what that reason is, but you've got that bar woman that says, we can't let them go. Like, you can't. So there's clearly some sort of like compassion. They're sympathising with them. There's clearly sort of, they don't want them to die, but at the same time, I think they want to protect the very secretive. They want to protect their privacy, so they don't want investigations or anything like. So because maybe they might be in too deep. Who knows? But that's why they sort of give them just stick to the roads. You'll be fine. But I think they are concerned for them. That's how I took it anyway.
I don't think they were literally sort of sacrificing them. I think maybe Brian Glover, he seemed of all of them the one who's kind of, because even the way he sort of stops the guy from talking to the doctor, you know, there's that. It's almost like embarrassment, isn't it? Almost like shame.
Cheeky appearance by Rick Mail as well. For any eagle-eyed fans, he just shows up. That's always loved that. Like that Rick Mail.
Yeah. Which was like, I mean, this must have been around the time of the Young Ones. He doesn't even get a single line. I mean, it's
yeah. I actually know what happened there, because I'll get back to it. I do a behind the scenes article of American Werewolf London, and it's on Jacked In for anyone that wants to check that out. But how that came about is John Landis was like in the movie. I think in the process of making the movie, he was in London. I don't know if he was doing some scouting, but he went to a comedy show to let his hair down, and it was a double act by two comedians, Rick Mail and Adrian Edmondson. And he loved them so much, he thought they were so funny, he sort of went up to them, like, after the fact and sort of said, oh, like, love you guys, listen, I'm making a movie, like, do you just want to be in it? And they were sort of like, all right, yeah. And then he said, right, so be at this location at this time on this day. And Adrian Edmondson thought it was a piss take. So he's like, I'm not going. Like, he just thought it was a wind-up. So he never went, but Rick Mail did. And that's why Rick Mail ended up in the movie. But Adrian Edmondson, if he, wasn't so suspicious, he could have been in the movie as well. The best scenes for me and the best parts of the movie have nothing to do with the fact that it's a werewolf movie, and I'll elaborate. So the dream sequences, I think that, for me, elevates it from a good werewolf movie to, well, this is just a genius horror, like, in general. Like, so you've got obviously when he's starting to turn, he's in the hospital and he's just having these really weird, lucid sort of dreams, like he's like totally out of it. But I was never confused, like, watching it as a kid. Like, I knew what he was going through. Like, that just totally, like there was no confusion sort of thing. So you've got him running through the woods, and he sees himself in a hospital bed, and then that opening when you see the teeth, like it's a brilliant jump scare, but also it's tremendous makeup. It looks absolutely brilliant. And then it goes a step further with the second dream sequence. It's when he's back in the States, and like as a viewer, you're like, oh, like is this a flashback? Is this like, is everything okay now? And then what proceeds to happen is, I don't even know how to describe them. These mutant werewolf Nazis just invade the home, shoot everyone up, and like it's quite vicious. Like the stabbing is relentless. He gets his throat slashed, and like that in itself would have been like, oh well, it's peaked. But then it goes another step further, and it, like I'd never seen this before as well. And I do apologise, I'm getting it all out, and then so welcome your view. He wakes up, he's greeted by the nurse, and then it's like, oh, I've just had a horrible dream. She's like, oh, I'll let in some sun or something to that fact. Don't worry, like you'll be all right. And she goes to the window, opens the curtains, and the mutant werewolf Nazi jumps out and just proceeds to stab her. Now, I've never seen a double dream before, that movie. And like I say, like that is one. Everything that I've just mentioned is why this movie, like those are my favorite parts of the movie. It's like the most horrific scenes, and also revolutionized how like horrors and what horrors could do, as opposed to just having.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean that I do clearly remember that dream sequence actually freaked me out more than anything in the rest of the movie. I think, because actually. There's a couple of like nasty moments, but for the most part, you don't really see the kills. You know, when it gets to the werewolf stuff, apart from like at the end, we probably should have said it, spoilers up front on this. I think we're just diving in. So apologies for the late spoilers warning. But yeah, if you haven't seen the film anyway, like we say, you know what you're thinking. The moment where like the policeman gets his head bitten off, that's probably the only really like nasty visual kill. So. That bit, that dream sequence where those mutant werewolf Nazis, you know, was just so violent. That really kind of rocked me as a kid, and I still find it a little bit freaky now. I mean, I think what's really interesting about that, I always wondered why it is there, you know, because it feels so out of place. But actually, they'd already kind of established. You know, that he's Jewish, and suddenly it's like this sort of it's a kind of Jewish nightmare, you know, because the fact that they're Nazis, it kind of quite subversive sort of psychological stuff going on there. You know, it hasn't really got anything to do with the werewolf transformation itself. It's just this kind of horror in general, you know, and the most horrific thing at that point, you know, I suppose if you're a Jewish kid that you could think of is Nazis combined with, you know, with werewolves. That's even worse. And that double jump scare is terrific. I mean, that is really nasty when he's like knifing Johnny Agutter. It's a pretty shocking scene, and I think it's still even watching it last night, it still worked for me. You know, I think that's it's very clever.
Well, I think he's a Jew. What makes you say that? I've had a look. Really, Susan?
So there's quite a lot of comedy in that opening section when they're in the hospital. You know, you've just had this really horrific, traumatic beginning, which is laced with atmosphere, and I mean it's got a few little witty moments, but it's kind of like it is like a creepy opening, and then you know you go into like day-to-day life of the hospital. You've got those the mad sort of scenes. I don't know what you think about the scenes with the doctor and the policeman when they turn up, and it's. You know, and he keeps getting the phone calls from his receptionist.
Roger Matheson, Doctor.
Well, not here.
He's on the telephone.
Well, tell him I'm out. Tell him I've passed away, an old war wound.
You've got the guy, you know, the sort of bumbling policeman and the detective, you know, that kind of pairing. All this stuff sort of happening intercut with the dream sequences. I think it's a really interesting tone Landis was going for there, because it kind of keeps disarming you, because one minute you're laughing, and then there's this mad dream sequence, and then it's another silly scene, and then you're laughing again, and then it's a dream sequence. What do you think of that?
Oh yeah, no, I think it does a really good job of sort of relieving you, for lack of a better word. But yeah, like you've got these horrific moments, but then the comedic moments aren't forced. It's like, well, we're going to chuck a joke in here to balance it out. It's like, no, these are just funny instances that are happening, but also they feel legit. Like, for instance, I feel like in another movie, there's so many horror movies out there. I'm not going to burn through them, but when a horrendous dream sequences happen, the person will wake up in a cold sweat and just look absolutely horrified. And this one, he on that note, he wakes up to go back to the horrendous Nazi mutant zombie stabbing sequence when stabbing Jenny Agutter on the floor. After that double dream, he wakes up and does the exact same thing as the audience are doing. Like, he sits up and he's like, "Oh shit!" Like, but it's like, it's funny.
What the hell was that?
Yeah. Like, he wakes up, he's like, "Oh shit!" Like, just had 2 dreams and they were absolutely horrendous. But like, my God, it's so funny. And in terms of like what you were saying about the doctor and his receptionist and stuff, I think it does a really good job of establishing not only the world that this is taking place in, but also like the London that this is taking place in, and the type of people that we're dealing with. Now, he is sort of like a, not a brash American, but like he does very good in that American role, sort of like how he carries himself, and it contrasts well against these English characters that are sort of like really proper, sort of reserved, and he's trying to be like, "Oh, like, listen, this horrendous things happened, like, I've been attacked. It wasn't a crazy man in a mental institution, it was a big wolf or whatever." And I love the doctor. Every time I see the doctor's response, he's like, "Now, David, now I'm sure if something like that was it, I'm sure we'd have seen it on the telly." But even the use of, like, especially from John Landis's perspective, like an American director, like even the little thing, like it might have fallen on deaf ears to an English audience, but I love the use of the word telly, because it's just like that. This is where we are, and these are the people that inhabit this world. So telly, and I was like, just that little word, I was like, someone said like it's a terrific window into England at the time, like, well, especially London, and it's when he's on the bus and he's surrounded by those punks, and it's just such a. It's not like forced. They're not like the whole movie isn't basically as tends to be the case with a lot of American movies depicting Britain or England. They always focus on London, and they always sort of say like I don't know, tea and scones and that sort of deal. But it's more of a realistic sort of, no, this is London. Look at all these like headbanging like punks and stuff on the bus, and it's just absolutely terrific. So I think, I don't know what you think.
It very much feels like, yeah, the sort of Britain you hear about, you know, in the kind of late 70s, early 80s. I mean, I think it felt pretty authentic, you know, everything around like Piccadilly. I think some people have flagged about like the lack of porn cinemas in Piccadilly at the time, you know, but it's like just everything about it, the buses, the tube, you know, it's it definitely captures that sort of the feel of kind of in, you know, central London. And I thought the bit with the punks is very good. They are like the most punky punks you've ever seen. They're so over the top. But I like the fact that you know, if it was at the time, if you think like how many films there were sort of showing how like rough New York was, and it's always like if you showed punks, they're basically pulling knives and mugging people. These ones are just like, you know, snogging their girlfriends and giving him the you know, the evil eye, but they don't start on him or anything like that. So it's just, yeah, it kind of gives it that just real sort of nice, you know, city feel, but kind of quite British.
It is brilliant because you've got that Yorkshire sort of countryside as well as London. They could have just done London, but they didn't, which is rare, because it takes us back to that point where normally you just get that stereotypical British scene, which is normally London city centre, and everyone just speaks the Queen's English, which I think is another testament to how much effort is put into this movie, like by having that setting to introduce you as well. Like, it doesn't even start with London, it introduces you to this sort of like countryside setting, which is absolutely brilliant.
There is a little bit of condensed England geography going on there.
Yeah,
you know? The fact the Doctor just pops out from London to the Yorkshire Dales and back. You know?
Hospital. Yeah, we're going to take you to a hospital that's like a 4 or 5 hour drive away.
yeah. That's some drive to go for half a Guinness that he only has 2 sips of.
Can I have a piece of toast?
And I think, like, certainly not to be misconstrued. I mean, like, anyone that hasn't seen it, I think when a lot of people talk about 80s horror in terms of the humour, it's not sort of like unintentional humour. it's done on purpose. It's not like funny because it's dated, for instance. It's funny because they're going like a dark route with it. And for instance, when I first watched it, and the scene that you mentioned with Jack in the hospital, so another testament, Rick Baker that did the makeup on this, absolutely tremendous. And I think he won an award. I think an award was invented for special effects because of Rick Baker, like at the Oscars. Like, that didn't exist, but because he was so good, it's like, well, we need to recognize this. And I think you're right in terms of the makeup. That hospital scene, obviously the transformation scene's groundbreaking and like infamous, but the hospital scene, I was watching it, and it's when Jack shows up, he's at the bedside, and he's still got these fresh wounds from when he was torn to bits by a wolf. And he's got it's really small, but he's got this little bit of skin that's flapping about as he's talking, like from his neck. And I was watching this, and the mother, just like who I was watching it with, just laughed. And I sort of like looked, and I thought it was funny, but then she laughed, and it was sort of like giving me permission to laugh. Like I was like, oh, okay, this is like, this is funny, and which I hadn't seen before. I think in terms of 80s horror, the other horrors that I definitely shouldn't have seen at that age were the likes of Evil Dead. But my God, that is like full horror, and there's no humour at all. And then I watched this one, which was just as graphic, but it had these moments where it's just funny. He keeps showing up, and he's looking worse and worse each time. And it's just absolutely hilarious. You've got when he wakes up naked in the zoo. Absolutely hilarious.
I don't know who you are.
I'm the famous balloon thief.
Why would a thief want to give me £2?
Where he steals the balloons is just...
The famous balloon
I don't think you'd get that in a film now. I don't think anyone would have the balls to do a film like that, like a scene like that now. You know, a naked man in a bush stealing balloons from a kid. But it's just so funny, like the way they do it. It's, you know, the kid is brilliant.
Balloon thief want to give me £2. I'll tell you why. Like, it just mixed up with the balloon. Absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
Mummy, a naked man stole my balloons.
Like, so British as well. What?
So good. Obviously, as the years have gone on, you just realise just how funny it is the older you get, and kind of things like the subtlety of the soundtrack. That took me a few watches, you know, to really appreciate that, I think. And when you realise what they've done, it's like the comedy runs through every element of it. Quite like the nod of the fact that you got the Muppets as well, which seems like really random. But then I realised Frank Oz was the...
I was going to say, yeah, Frank Oz comes in as the doctor. Mr. Kessler! Mr. Kessler!
The worst, like ambassador, embassy guy ever, where he's just like, this guy's just had a horrific experience, and he's just like, you are shaming the American people. It's like, wow, Mr. Sensitive there.
They want to keep questioning you, and I have given them permission to do so, just shouting in this poor man's face that's been through an ordeal.
It's just literally found out his best mate has been mauled to death. And
So what I wanted to touch on, obviously, is the time that this movie came out, 1981, and what I did say is it revolutionised, obviously, how werewolf movies were made, that subgenre. But it's funny because another very famous werewolf movie came out at the exact same time, and that's Joe Dante's The Howling. Now, you'll generally find with fans they're either for one or the other. It's obviously got its differences that separate them, but because they came out at the exact same time, you're either for one or the other, especially since the effects. People, for instance, argue the effects in The Howling, those that are pro-Howling, argue the effects are better than American Werewolf. I'm on the other side. And the reason...
They're wrong.
The reason they're wrong... It's funny because I think I was watching... In Search of Darkness, and they went into great length, and I didn't realise how many people were pro-Howling. I thought it was just a given. So I rewatched Howling, and I definitely think both movies are effects-wise. You can tell they were of that time. I definitely think American Werewolf has aged better because you watch, and this is another strength of American Werewolf in London, you watch that transformation scene in The Howling, and they've got the pulse effect, and in my opinion, and this is nothing against the people that did it at the time, it looks quite bad, it looks quite dated, it doesn't look good when the person's trying. and it's in the dark. And I'm a huge fan of doing stuff in the dark so that it just looks better. But a testament to the strength of American Werewolf in London, when he transforms, it's in the light. They say they've put so much effort in with their effects. They want everyone to see every inch of this effect happening, whereas the Howland's put it in the dark, and even then it doesn't look, I don't think it's aged particularly well. Nothing against the Howland, by the way, I'm a huge fan. I just think when compared against American Werewolf, and John Landis said, you know, like, if a person's entire like bone structure and everything was changing, Jesus, that would be painful. It's not like the Wolfman where you just sort of see like a sort of fade cut, and then he's got more hair, then a fade cut, and then, oh, there's fangs. Then it's like, no, like, we're going to show you this guy in excruciating agony, like the hand like stretching, and like he looks like he's on fire, like his skin, so it looks like he's burned. Like,
it just, I cannot get over just how good it still looks. I mean, even watching it last night, high def, all that, it just looks absolutely like incredible. And like you say, it's the pacing of the change as well. It's not quick. It's not, you know, it takes its time. It's in literally a well-lit lounge in the most almost like benign kind of setting you could transform. You know, it's just a flowery English lounge. You know, there's nothing dark about it. They didn't try to make it look moody. It is just the most realistic setting. And then this terrible thing happens. And I just think that was inspired, like, bit choice artistically, because I think the even the build up to it, you know, he's just having the most boring evening, you know, and we've all had those days where I'm sure we're walking around a house bored and going, oh, what do I do? I've got nothing to do, you know, and it really captures just that dull countdown. So when it kicks in, it happens instantly, like the second the moon comes out, and he just screams in pain. I mean, it's just it's like a jolt. And then it just doesn't let up for like about, what, 2-3 minutes or something. I mean, it just feels like that anyway. There's a reason it's still to this day the best transformation. Like, so many werewolf films have come and gone, and none of them have come close, I think, to having a transformation as like really impactful as that.
Completely agree. There's, and once again, like I say, when comparing it against the Howland, just because I guess it didn't break any ground. I'll tell you what I did enjoy. It came out years later. 1984, Company of Wolves. Don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like a sort of, I think Brian Glover's in that as well, funnily enough, but it's like a English sort of fairy tale, like folk horror around werewolves, and it's the only one that I really liked as much, not as much, but certainly it was close to American Werewolf. And it's when people are transforming, sort of the wolf's inside of them, and you can sort of, like, the face stretches open and you see the dog's snout sort of poke out the mouth, and sort of everything stretches. And the dog. But no, I completely agree that American Werewolf, it's got its infamy for a reason, in that no one's touched it since. I don't really want to talk about it, but the travesty that was an American Werewolf in Paris. When
I've never even bothered.
You're not missing out. It was one of those sequels. The sort of like had some of the same concepts. It wasn't executed as well. And all of the werewolves look completely different, and they're all like done computer generated as well.
At a time, let's be honest, when we're not exactly talking today's CG either.
No,
I mean, that was the thing.
It looks absolutely horrendous. It's like Lawnmower Man graphics. It's just so bad, and it's brilliant that this one, like, it still gets recognised for the effort that was put in, so to speak.
It's almost like it became one of those sacred cows, isn't it? It's like nobody wanted to even go near it because that special effects sequence is so revered. Nobody's ever wanted to touch it, I feel. It's but there's definitely room for it.
Oh, definitely. And like on the design as well of the wolf, I love the whole less is more. Like, you barely see it. Like, it's very small clips. I mean, brilliant. Like, it's one of my favorite designs for, like, the face. It literally looks like a hound from hell, which is, I think, what John Landis wanted. This big, like, sort of furry creature. Its eyes alone, like the close-ups when you just see so much evil and anger in the eyes. And like, I think that's brilliant. It just shows you that sort of David's not there anymore, especially like after the fact when he wakes up after the first time and he has no recollection of what he did. Whereas I think in other portrayals, like, people are aware they're becoming this monster and just regret the actions that they're doing. But it's just like, no, David's not there anymore. But the best scene for me, and it's the same one for Landis, is the escalator scene with Gerald going up the escalator, and you just see a brief clip which kind of shows you the full size, but it's a bit like a bird's eye view, so you can sort of see it, but not really see it, and it just looks so big. And that's the first time, because I think it does a POV shot of the wolf running after him.
That shot is outstanding, because it's the only time until Piccadilly that you actually see it. You know, everything else, all the other kills are hinted at. You get the idea it's bulky, but that moment, it's only quick, but wow, what an effect.
The look on his face, you understand it, because you've just seen briefly what he's coming up against.
There's no panic, there's no screaming. I like that. It's just this almost like just stunned shock acceptance. You don't see that in horror movies a lot. You know, he's literally eyeballing it as it's coming towards him. It's a really cool death scene, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a nice little, it sort of strengthens, like, once again, the British world in which we find ourselves in this movie. It's like, I can assure you this isn't the slightest bit amusing. It's just like, that is the equivalent of, Billy, this isn't funny. I just like that whole, no, this is the British equivalent of that. And then he, like you say, he sees it and he's just like, oh God, and then he runs.
I definitely feel that he needs to work on his cardio a little bit. Like he gives up a bit easy. Like he falls over that barrier and that's it. He's just, you know, it is a great scene. What do you think in terms of the actual sort of the character arc for David?
It's a funny one, because I don't feel like he grows as a person. He reveals what kind of person he is, which is brilliant, because you do grow attached to this character. And then when he finds out what he is, he rings his parents and he tries to kill himself. And it's like, he's aware that this is horrendous, because he doesn't realise at first, he doesn't believe what Jack's saying. But it adds some realism to the character, because I was watching that and it made me question, what would I do? And he pretty much does the same thing as what I would do. It's like, I would say, oh, well, if I was a werewolf, I'd probably end it. I wouldn't want anyone to come to harm. And it's like, yeah, it's good in theory, but when it comes to actually doing it, he can't necessarily bring himself to do it, and then it's too late, and he just changes anyway. And I'd like to think that's probably what would happen to me. It's like, oh, I need to kill myself. I don't want anyone else to get hurt. Nah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't be able to go through with it, and then time would run out, and I would obviously be in a pornographic cinema, and then change.
Of course.
Yeah. And then obviously
you're gonna go out.
Yeah. But it's kind of good, because you know that's what he wants to do. He just doesn't necessarily have the bottle to do it. So it kind of makes you it's a weird emotion that you feel with the ending, because you don't necessarily feel bad for him, because you know that's what he wanted. He just couldn't go through with it. But at the same time, you're given such a likable character, and you just feel sorry for, like, it's a shame this has happened to him.
But it's also, it is a really dark film. It's a dark story. I mean, it's, you know, it centers around the fact that, you know, he knows he may be, or he doesn't realise to start with, he's going to be transforming, but his friend is basically telling him to kill himself. It's like the anti-male suicide story, you know, in 1981. You know, it's literally like telling him he has to die. And I think that that's quite a dark thing when you think about it, you know. I do like the ending. I think it works really well. It is basically the same ending of pretty much all werewolf films. It's like the werewolf bites it, you know. I think they've done so much good character work up to that point, because there's less of the mystery. What I found with the Wolfman is when you watch that, obviously, he spends most of the film trying to even understand the curse and all that, and whether it's him, and there's a lot of not accepting it. What I love about David is he's getting these clues, very, very like blunt clues from Jack saying you're going to become a werewolf, mate. But then you've got the moment he's in that taxi, he's feeling frisky, you know, he's feeling like alive. But the moment they say 6 people were killed, there's not a second where he suddenly goes, oh no, it can't possibly.
Oh, no,
he just accepts it immediately, and I think that was really interesting, really nice choice to not drag it out. You could have had a whole, oh, it couldn't have been me, blah, blah, but he just accepts it and immediately knows what he's got to do. And I thought that was quite refreshing for the time. I guess then all the others up to that point had followed that standard template. The Oliver Reed, all those sort of films, they followed that standard template. But I think in this one, it was nice to see the werewolf just accept he's a werewolf very quickly and go, what have I got to do? I'm a danger.
He tries to get locked up first in the brilliant way, most brilliant way possible. He just starts insulting the monarchy. And even the policeman's like, right, run along now, or I'll arrest you. He's just like, that's what I want.
I'm going to be honest, my favourite line of all the ones he says is Shakespeare is French.
It's like the worst thing you can say.
So much. Just such a British scene, isn't it? It's just that sort of almost embarrassment to be making a fool of yourself in public. Not like this guy's a danger, but just like, oh, he's being unseemly. Should we move on to Jenny?
Yeah, absolutely. So my favourite actor in this movie is Jenny Agutter as Alex, or Nurse Alex Price, I should say. Her strengths are authentic emotions, in my opinion, and what she offers to the movie is a perfect contrast between the States and the UK. They didn't get an American actress to do an over-the-top RP accent. They cast Jenny Agutter, whose character is to the UK what David is to the States. And the best way to describe her in general is beautifully British. I mean, one of the talents she possesses is that she does tick the box of an attractive leading lady, but, and this is the English in her, she does so in a reserved yet confident way. She's such a strong character, and the love is there. Like, the love comes across. Even it doesn't seem forced either. I think a lot of movies, especially in the 80s, they're these forced relationships because you can tell they just need the characters to be together. But he's got that American charm that she gravitates to almost instantly, but it doesn't seem forced. But it's brilliantly done here with the Florence Nightingale effect. But I still think it was Agutter that made that believable. Such a presence. I mean, your eyes are drawn to her whenever she's in the room. She's not sexualized. She's empowered. She's not wearing a sexy nurse's outfit. She just is sexy in a nurse's outfit. And she doesn't follow that posh English stereotype. She's not stuck up and snooty, I'm not in the habit of bringing strange men home to my flat, you know what I mean? And it's just like you sort of get a sense of who she is by that small line. She's letting you know that she's not this kind of person, but she's quite taken with him. And the type of person
she's very sex positive, isn't she? She's very empowered. Yeah. I think for 1980, whatever is it too, she's incredibly sort of, she decides. She takes him back to hers. He doesn't seduce her. She pretty much she basically jumps on him in the hospital. She's the one that sort of says, I've had 7 lovers, David, which just is a weird phrase. And I think I'd feel slightly creeped out if somebody said to me how many lovers they'd had just before. But just the whole thing is great. She's totally in control at every stage. He's not making the moves on her. She's making the moves on him right from day one. And then right to the point of like, well, I'm going to go and take a shower now, find something to do. And yes, and I thought that's a really, really cool touch because like you say, I mean, let's be honest, women in the 80s weren't well served, and I think mostly it would be the guy getting the girl, but in this case it's very much the girl gets the guy, I think.
Oh no, that's totally nailed on the head. That's a brilliant way of putting it. From the instant that she sees him, you can tell she's smitten. So much so that jump to the end, when they're in the taxi on the way to the hospital, she goes after him, but she's not trying to deceive him to get him to cooperate. She's actually in love with him. And I think that comes across most in the very last scene when she sees him, in full moon mode. And he looks terrifying, but she still says, I love you. And I love that she's not an 80s scream queen. Instead, it ends with this cry, like not even an out loud cry, but an actual heartfelt one. I think all in all, the reason I chose Agutter is she does add a sadness to the ending because she made us buy that relationship. And yeah, without her, people probably still would have talked about, you know, the effects and the humour. But I'm glad that because of her, she made the romance just as strong as the other elements.
Classic. If you haven't seen it, run out and watch it. But how do you feel that kind of performance fits into the Jenny Agutter canon of films that you've seen? Kind of any, and how do you think that sort of does? You know, is it a career high for her? Do you think?
I definitely think so. And that's well, maybe internationally a career high, because you've got the likes of the Railway Children that a lot of people in the UK grew up on, and that was kind of like when people first started taking notice. So she had a tremendous career background, not to mention Logan's Run, which, to be honest, you mentioned like, I know like parents and grandparents and like certainly the older generation, whenever I mention Logan's Run, the first thing people generally say is, oh, classic Jenny Agutter. The only other thing I saw her in at that time, and it just goes to show how messed up of a childhood I had with how many horrors I watched, was Child's Play 2. She played a much smaller role, slash victim of Chucky, slash. And she was this adoptive mother in that, and same thing, totally bought her in that role. I mean, especially when she was kicking off with Andy, she just nails embodying a character. They didn't give her the same respect, given the type of like I say, how amazing she was in American Werewolf, but in Child's Play 2 she was very much just a number to add to the body count.
She sort of had quite an interesting career, you know, looking over it. I don't think I'd seen as many things as I thought I had, but I mean, just seeing her still pop up in things, I always love it when she's suddenly there. And I mean, I think the most recent thing I saw her in was when she had quite a prominent role in Captain America: Winter Soldier, which was amazing. You know, suddenly seeing her pop up as the council member, and the one where Robert Redford, like they actually disguise, isn't it? It's like they kind of use the disguise to get Robert Redford, and so she's got like even gets a bit of an action scene. And it's that was quite good. I was a big fan of Spooks. You know, she was a real piece of work in that. There was another film that jumped out at me, and I hadn't thought of this film in years. And it's a film called Blue Juice. Have you ever seen Blue Juice? It's not actually good. It's pretty terrible. But I was looking it up yesterday because I was like, oh yeah, is this some sort of surf comedy thing from the mid-90s? And it's actually insane. It's got the cast is like Sean Pertwee, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Ewan McGregor, Jenny Agutter. Like, I was looking at this cast and thinking, this film is... It's completely bonkers. It's like a low-budget British thing. It stars Sean Pertwee, and I remember Ewan McGregor's like his mate or something. But I just didn't realise it was all those actors because I saw it so long ago. And I remember there's a storyline. One of the characters in it, there's a storyline where they're trying to find Jenny Agutter's character to try and seduce them. It's like a young guy, and she's like probably 40s, 50s at this point. But she's a famous TV actress, so it's very much kind of like he's trying to live out this kind of fantasy. And then, like, actually, when he ends up meeting her, I remember they just have like a cup of tea, and she sort of talks him like, you know, talks to him a bit, and he realizes he's a bit of a, you know, sad loser. It's quite good. So that was a real, even in the 90s, I think Jenny Agutter was very aware to do that role of kind of, she was the perfect choice, I think, for that.
I mean, it's what she does well. I remember, like, for instance, on Logan's Run, like, yeah, like, even to this day, she says how much she hated those outfits. And she says she doesn't go to Comic Cons for the same reason, conventions, because characters, she says people would come up to her, like, wearing the outfits. And she was so embarrassed, but, like I say, that's a testament to her acting abilities. Is she didn't come across as uncomfortable at all. Jenny
Agutter, great, I think, great actress. Never sort of too typecast. Very, like, quite versatile. Always plummy with that voice, but like actually when you look at her CV, like done a great range of stuff. So yeah.
Thankfully, she continues to grace our screens with the likes of Marvel and Call the Midwife. So that's the end of our first episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is very much appreciated. So, to go back to the rules, I've picked my movie, I've picked my actor within said movie. Now, Carl needs to pick someone else that was in my movie, in this case, American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, that's right. So the chain has well and truly begun now. So we have our first link. So the linking actor I've decided to go with is Mr. Brian Glover. I've made it really easy for you, Jack. Your next week is going to be like a smorgasbord of choice, because basically I'm going with Alien 3. David Fincher's very divisive, I think it's fair to say.
Very nice way of putting it.
So, yeah, that's going to be episode 2. Brian Glover and Alien 3.
And by all means, you guys, you can let us know in the comments who you might have chosen, if another person within American Werewolf that you would have chosen for your choice, but really hoping you would choose Michael Carter, who played Gerald, because, well, the only other thing I've seen him in is Star Wars. He plays the Jabba Wonka guy with the big slug head.
No, really? You've just, wow.
Yeah, that's Gerald on the escalator.
That's just blown my mind. I had no idea. That's amazing. I was watching him and I thought, I feel I've seen him in something else, but I never would have put that.
Slightest bit amusing. That's what he should have said in Star Wars. I would have given away straight away.
Fantastic. Wow. Wow. To be fair, I don't think we'd have probably got much of a career discussion out of him, but that,
no, I've only seen him those two
that
things.
is actually genius. That is genius. I'm certainly going to be looking that up now. Well, thank you, Jack. Thank you for joining. Thank you for this collaboration. I'm really excited about where this is going to go. Really good to hear people's comments, and please like and subscribe. Up there somewhere to Dark Matters, as well as all the other films that we host on the channel. I'm delighted to announce a piece of breaking news is that basically Jack's short film writing debut, Enclosed, which has been doing a great festival round at the moment, winning a few awards. That's now going to be coming to the channel. Yeah,
absolutely. Just a huge fan of horror, so the fact that some horror that was in my head is now outside of my head for the world to see, I'm very excited.
That's what it's all about, churning those horrors out so other people can be disgusted so you don't have to be.
Absolutely.
It's why we do it. It's therapy. And please also check out Jack's channel. Jack, anything you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, so Jack from Jack Din, articles, reviews, recommendations, lists, basically a gateway into good, bad, ugly, niche, new, old movies alike. Website is jackdinmovies.com. You'll pretty much find links to everything on there.
And all our social links for both Dark Matters and Jack Din will be in the description underneath this video. Please check out Jack's website and also www.darkmatterfilms.co.uk for all our social links as well. So that, I think, wraps it up, Jack. I think that's episode 1 done.
Yeah, thank you very much for swinging by, and we'll see you next time as the chain continues.
Absolutely. And any ideas that people have for a good sign-off line, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I was still figuring that one out.
Chain, keep it together. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. We really look forward to everyone's feedback, and look forward to episode 2 in a couple of weeks.